Good evening. Maybe Harry wants say something. Harry, are you here?
Yes, of course. Good afternoon
Good
from me as
afternoon.
well. Andrei, we can hear you.
Okay.
Okay, crystal clear. So I don't have anything to say, just a hello. So we can start whenever you are ready.
Okay. So, dear colleagues, today webinar number 3 of our cycle, which is dedicated to the main principles of modern anti-aging medicine. And today we shall discuss a problem of nutrition and physical activity. I should say that these things are rather universal. I should say that these things are rather universal, and in spite of pathology and health status which have a person, and the main goal of proper nutrition and physical activity, of course, health and longevity. And sometimes we have, of course, a problem how to estimate the level of health, because health in understanding of different people is something cloudy, and usually those who have coaching and training and health, they can't define what does health mean. I should say that today we have 5 main features which can help us to estimate the level of health and the perspectives of longevity. They are body mass index, which must be less than 25 kilograms meter. The second one, the level of cholesterol in the blood serum, which must be less than or equal to 200 milliliters per deciliter. Number 3, absence of diabetes mellitus, or if person have this pathology, the serum glucose level must be in the measure between 4 and 5.9 millimole per liter. Level of blood pressure must be less than 130 and 80 millimeters hydrogram. And the new definition of health is the heart rate, which in norm must be between 50 and 90 beats per minute. But this is a status of health for every person. But after 65 years, we have some other features of health. We call them successful aging. The basis of successful aging, as far as you understand, is good functionality. And usually we can measure functionality by 2 tests, which we discussed yesterday. Test get up from your chair and walk. Maybe you remember that we must say to our patient to sit down to the chair, then stand up, make 3 steps forward, and then turn back and return to the chair. And this test in normal must be up to 14 seconds. And another measurement of successful aging is the muscular strength of the hand, grip strength, which is determined by dynamometric measurement. It must be more than 16 kilograms for women and more than 27 kilograms for men. So these 2 tests can define successful aging after 65 years. And the third characteristic, modern characteristic of health is good level of resilience. Of course, you understand that during life cycle, everybody meet with different problems, stresses, diseases, psychological stresses, and so on. And according to modern scientific data, the level of resilience, how can we pass through these stresses and problems, depends upon biological determinants. such as genetic and epigenetic influences, functioning of endocrine system of hypothalamus, pituitary glands, and adrenal cortex axis. It depends upon status of chronic inflammation and oxidative status, the state of gut microbiota, immune system, and so on. So resilience or possibility to successfully pass through the problems depends upon our biology. And the main principles, how can we create resilience and how can we create good level of health and successful aging? These are four principles: normal physical activity, a good and proper nutrition, a good diet, positive psychology, and so-called pro-resilience. These are special supplements, including peptides, which can allow to reach better resilience in a complex of these factors. So, as we say in anti-aging medicine, as far as you understand, that there are not so many medication for anti-aging medicine, but we say that physical activity and diet are the new drugs which can allow to build good health, to build longevity, to build successful aging, and to build good resilience. So the diet is the main characteristic, the main thing which allow to build all these things. In all over the world, of course, people often don't have proper nutrition, and they experience the so-called Western diet. This diet, which is rich in red meat, poultry, and dairy products, which a great number of saturated fatty acids, mainly myristic, palmitic, and stearic acids, which are associated with the higher cholesterol synthesis in liver. And by increasing of low density cholesterol, saturated fatty acids contribute to the development of atherosclerosis, and atherosclerosis as a disease leads to, for example, vascular aspects of dementia or ischemic head disease. So Western diet promote development of atherosclerosis and promote development of such widespread pathology as dementia and ischemic head disease. And saturated fatty acids also increase the so-called insulin resistance, which leads to the second type of diabetes mellitus. Also, Western diet means that consumer get a high amount of sugar, which leads to increased insulin resistance and causes diabetes. And unregulated blood sugar levels cause a phenomenon which is called endothelial dysfunction. Endothelium is a number of cells inside our vessels, which contribute also to development of atherosclerosis. And of course, this atherosclerosis leads to the development of cognitive decline, which is more pronounced in those who eat mainly foods high in sugar, saturated fats, and trans fats with insufficient number of fiber and vitamins. Of course, such improper nutrition as Western diet leads to the pathological processes in brain. According to modern data, nutrition leads to the development of inflammation of the brain, which cause Alzheimer's disease and cognitive dysfunction in our brain. During eating of this Western improper diet, produced special molecules such as pro-inflammatory cytokines, such as interleukin 6, interleukin 1 beta, tumor necrosis factor, which disrupt the synaptic plasticity of hippocampus, and hippocampus is the main and the first structure of brain, which is a target for the beginning of Alzheimer's disease. So this Western diet leads to neuroinflammation through two mechanisms: direct effect to the brain and inflammatory effects to the peripheral tissues, leading to neuroinflammation. So in this, by this example, I want to show you that improper diet leads to the development of atherosclerosis, inflammation, and cognitive decline in the brain. So to eat good, to have proper nutrition, to have right nutrition, it's a really drug which prevent all these negative things. Western diet, which is rich by saturated fats, can lead to activation of microglia. Microglia are special cells in brain which produced these pro-inflammatory molecules, and they cause acceleration of neurodegeneration. It's a special process which contribute to the development of Alzheimer's disease. And what is another negative side of Western type of diet? It changes the communities of intestinal bacteria, which violates the integrity of intestinal barrier and promotes the entry of harmful products into the bloodstream, which reach our brain and cause Alzheimer's diseases too. So you see by this example that Western diet is very bad from the point of view of development of cognitive decline. But I should say that Western diet calls also phenomenon which is called systemic inflammation. It's a pity, but Western diet is widespread in many countries over past 40 years, is characterized by the relatively low content of fruits, vegetables, and other foods rich in fiber and prebiotics. Prebiotics are the fibers in food which are necessary to good development of microbiota, of special bacteria and microorganisms which live in our gut. Western diet is characterized by a high content of refined grains, alcohol, and ultra-processed products. So these ultra-processed products are prepared at high temperature and in low humidity conditions. They increase appetite and are associated with overeating and obesity and inflammation. So food with and also this ultra-processed products is a food with a high glycemic load, such as isolated sugars and refined grains, which also cause inflammation, increased oxidative stress, and activates negative pathological process in our organism. Also, another characteristic feature of Western diet is a great number of salt, which is very unhealthy, and salt affects different organs. It leads to the elevation of blood pressure, shift special cells such as macrophages towards the pro-inflammation, and affects the composition of intestinal microbiota. It reduced the number of positive lactobacilli, special bacteria, which produce necessary for organism positive molecules. And salt decrease all these positive things. And also, according to scientific data, the consumption of foods which high in trans fats and salt is associated with an increased risk on 14% of all causes of death, including cardiovascular and oncological diseases. And another part of Western diet is the strong evidence between this unhealthy nutrition and mortality due to the diseases which developed under the influence of information. Systemic analysis of nutrition data from approximately 200 countries revealed poor nutrition and proper nutrition as a main risk factor for death in 2019, which is characterized that improper nutrition is very bad for health status. Of course, such Western diet with fatty acids, with salt, with ultra-processed products, with a great number of sugar, it leads, for example, to overweight, and the overweight is the earlier and the most evidence-based risk factor of arterial hypertension. Specialists think that we can eat everything before 20 years. After 20 years old, every person must experience proper nutrition and good nutrition to avoid such negative consequences which we discussing now. And of course, we say that nutritional support is a modern drug. Modern diet is a diet with a limited number of calories and usage of vegetables, proteins for cooking, green proteins, as we say. It's consuming enough fish, limiting use of salt and sugar. And of course, the gold standard of proper nutrition is Mediterranean diet. You are from Greece, and of course you experience this diet, which is characterized by high consumption of vegetables and fruits, vegetable and olive oil, cereals, nuts, moderate consumption of proteins, and low consumption of sweets. And of course, we need sometimes to fortify the food with the products with the high antioxidant potential and rich in trace elements, including elements of synthetic origin, such as magnesium, thiamine, riboflavin, calcium, selenium, vitamin D, L-arginine, and others. And of course, peptides as a new anti-aging drug is also very good for fortification of food, for usage to increase the positive effects of this Mediterranean diet. And maybe the influence of bad ecological conditions lead us to the understanding that nutrition must be good for men and must be good for nature. And specialists, scientists, now we understand that it is necessary to choose those products which are useful for men, for health of men, but the production of these products and elements of food must be secure for nature. And the so-called, and in next slides, I will show you some products which really have high level of prevention of cardiovascular diseases, of dementia, of atherosclerosis, and of oncological diseases on one hand, but on another hand, their production, the manufacturing of these products, they are not so dangerous for nature, for nature and for ecology. Of course, you will see some numbers in these slides. It doesn't mean that we are in pharmacy, and it doesn't mean that we must count every 1 or 2 grams or kilocalorium, but these numbers, they are oriental. So if we will have some mistake in this counting, it is not very dangerous for human. So the first one is to eat rice, wheat, corn, approximately 200 grams per day. Potatoes are, according to modern scientific data, are dangerous for health because potato have a high level of glycemic load. Because when we eat potato, when we consume potato, their level of glucose elevates, and it starts at the high level for long period of time, and it's overload our endocrine system and leads to inflammation, to atherosclerosis and diabetes mellitus. That's why we don't recommend to eat potato. It must be very small amount, approximately 50 grams per day. And such a great number of potatoes you see in this picture, we can make some holiday, for example, one time per week or even per month. What is necessary to eat obligatory? It's 500 grams of crispy yellow red green foods per day, because in these fruits and vegetables of different colors, there is a necessary amount of microelements, of fibers, which are necessary to build good functioning of cardiovascular system. What about milk? It is rather useful, but before 65 years old, approximately, we must introduce to our diet milk or cheese approximately 200 grams per day. After 65 years, the whole milk may be not tolerant for organism. That's why it is better to use cheese, because of abnormal function of gut. Beef and pork, this is red meat. According to modern scientific data, they cause oncological diseases and cardiovascular diseases. That's why the number of products with beef and pork, red meat, must be very small, approximately 10 grams per day. But of course, we need some proteins, and that's why we recommend to our patients to include to the diet poultry meat, approximately 30 or 50 grams per day, and of course fish. It is better to use sea fish, 30 grams per day, which is a very necessary source of proteins, which are necessary for our organism. Sometimes we can allow to eat eggs. Eggs is a source of vitamin D, which not only produced by our skin, by the during insulation, but also we consume some level of vitamin D from food, and eggs, by the way, is one of good variant to introduce vitamin D with food. And the modern trend, of course, is to consume vegetable proteins, approximately 50 grams per day. It may be beans, lentils, peas, soy products, peanuts, nuts. They are very necessary. This is a very important source of proteins, which are necessary for good functioning of our organism. And of course, the basic of Mediterranean diet is polyunsaturated fats. In these products we can see, and this picture, there are many such kind of fats, and we must introduce approximately 50 grams per day by these polyunsaturated fats, which are very important for prevention of cardiovascular diseases, of oncological diseases, and of atherosclerosis and dementia. What about sweets? We need some sweet because our brain is a high energetic station. of our body, the mass of brain is not very high, but brain is the main organ which need a high level of energy, and some energy goes from sweets. But sweets are not good for the development of atherosclerosis and diabetes mellitus. We can allow to our patients to introduce approximately 30 grams of sweets per day, which can be useful for prevention of dementia, because sweets are necessary for our brain to better its functioning. And of course, such diet is of great importance, but nevertheless, sometimes we recommend some pro-resilient. We fortificate this diet by some drugs. For example, we used such supplement as cerebrastin as a source of taurine and guarana. Taurine is very important amino acid. It is formed in human body from amino acid cysteine. It is found in the largest amount in liver and brain. In the brain, it is a neurotransmitter. It's a special molecule which inhibits transmission between nervous cells, and therefore taurine has anticonvulsant activity, improves energy process in the brain, and improves the metabolism of tissue of eyeball and retina. Also, it is used as a subconjunctival administration. It means that we put it to the eye, and it is useful as a retina protector, anti-cataract effect, and improvement of local metabolism of the eye, and in general have rather many positive effects, such as metabolic, cardioprotective, hepatoprotective, hypertensive, and so on. In hippocampus, taurine promotes neurogenesis. It's a creation of new nervous cells, which improves memory and other cognitive abilities, and even it have radioprotective effects and properties. We fortificate by taurine some diets in some situations. For example, during fasting, when there are religious demands, and during restrictive diet, if anybody want to decrease overweight during this fasting and restrictive diet, the taurine intake is reduced in high level. That's why we need to introduce it with special supplements. We use taurine during therapy of obesity, and we see that when we use taurine during therapy of obesity, we see the increasement of hormone adiponectin, the decreased level of C-reactive protein as a marker of inflammation, and improvement of the profile of oxidative stress. And taurine is very good for prevention of coronary heart disease with an increased content of low-density lipoproteins. These changes are preclinical when we don't observe any clinical features of this disease, but if to analyze the sample of blood, we see the low-density level, the increased level of low-density lipoproteins, which create atherosclerosis. That's why taurine may be useful in such situation. And we use 3 amino acids, taurine, glutamine, and arginine, in preparation for surgery. And we see that under the usage of these amino acids, the process of healing of post-operated wounds became more fast and more fluent and without any complications. Also, we can use taurine for increases of muscle strength and endurance during physical performance, to help to person to increase muscle strength and endurance. And cerebrastin contains also guarana. It's a climbing vine that naturally occurs mainly in Amazonian part of Brazil and Paraguay. And it's a very powerful stimulator of central nervous activity, which contain twice as much caffeine as coffee beans. And guarana fruit also is a source of such positive molecules and resins, tannins, caffeine, and it affects strong effects to the brain. And our patients say that they became more active, more concentrated after usage of guarana. This is a picture of fruits of guarana, and indications for usage of cerebrastin as a fortification of the diet, of a modern proper diet, is chronic inflammation exhaustion syndrome, because everybody now are under the influence of different devices, electronic devices, and the complication of constant usage of these electronic devices is chronic inflammation exhaustion syndrome. For prevention and treatment of age situational depression, when elders don't recognize their age and they don't want to be friends with their age, to support of physical and mental work, for prevention of coronary heart disease with elevated level of low density lipoproteins, for preparation for surgical operations, for comprehensive treatment of obesity. We use it as a nutraceutical for supplement for restrictive diets and during fasting, for treatment of chronic fatigue syndrome with chronic psycho-emotional stress. But these supplements have some contraindications. For example, individual intolerance of components, pregnancy, breastfeeding, insomnia, uncorrected arterial hypertension with high level of blood pressure, with open-angle glaucoma, and we don't recommend such supplements for persons who are under 18 years old. It is used 1 capsule per day, no later than 5 p.m. and it is not very calorical thing, so doesn't cause overweight and obesity. So this is some part of information about diet. But it is interesting, I read a few days ago that in Greece, culturally, it's a region which experienced Mediterranean diet, but nevertheless, the length of life of Greek people in comparison with some countries is not so high, because Greek people, they have proper nutrition, but they don't have necessary level of physical activity. According to recommendations of World Health Organization, it is necessary what is the minimum of physical activity, and we must say to our patients this information. So aerobic loads of medium intensity, it is minimum from 150 to 300 minutes per week, or aerobic loads of high intensity 75 minutes a week. But we must mention in mind that this number of minutes is suitable only when we start moving and move 10 minutes and more. In this situation, we can count and we can gather this necessary amount of minutes. So if we start move, we must move 10 minutes a day. Also, it is necessary to make exercises to strengthen the main muscles group at least 2 days a week. And for elders, we recommend balance exercises, Tai Chi, or any available exercises for health reasons, but it is necessary to move. It is not necessary, it is not allowed to sit. We must move any minute, any 3 minutes, and we must move and to use it this time for health. And why movement is so necessary? Because a few years ago it was understood that during physical activity, whole organs of our organism produce special molecules which are called exerkins. It is produced by immune system, nervous system, by cardiometabolic tissues such as cardiovascular system, adipose tissue, endocrine system, liver, skeletal muscles. Also, these exerkins produced by bones and by gut. So, these exerkins are necessary to increase our resilience, to increase the resistance to stress, to the diseases. And by exerkins, by these molecules, it is proved now, we have the prevention of cardiovascular diseases, cognitive decline, obesity, cancer, and diabetes mellitus. And due to exerkins, we have increasement of health span, of longevity, and we have better resilience. So physical activity is necessary to produce these exerkins in different organs and systems for better health. And I should say that, of course, many variants of physical activity leads to many effects for health. For example, increasing number of steps, it means that they help us to reach positive dynamics of cholesterol levels. Or short intensity aerobic exercise reduce the risk of cardiovascular pathology. Aerobic exercises and resistance exercises for 4 weeks reduce the stiffness of the aortic wall, and this stiffness lead to the increasement of level of arterial hypertension. So by reducing of the stiffness of the aortic wall, we can reach the decreasement of level of arterial hypertension. Cycling for 4 weeks leads to reduction in plasma special molecules which are called triglycerides, which are important risk factor of development of atherosclerosis. Combination of aerobic loads and resistance exercises leads to mobilization of fat and increase the aerobic reserve, which is necessary to build good resilience. And short aerobic loads for resistance, for example, lowering blood pressure and slowing heart rate. So there are many different positive effects of physical activity, and the biochemical explanation of these positive effects are exerkins which produced during physical activity. And at this slide you can see another positive effect of physical activity, the resistance exercises which reduce muscle weakness, increase level of insulin sensitivity, and improve the quality of life. So physical exercises are really important. And of course, we recommend to our patients to use different kinds of peptides, because peptides, they give material to produce exerkins. You see, because when we intensively walk in gym, or when we experience aerobic physical activity, our organism, different tissues, they produce exerkins, but these tissues and these cells which produce them, they need a building material, and this building material are peptides. And as far as I understand, you have possibility to recommend to our patients such thing as bioavailable minerals with peptides, supplements Ratio NutriLife, which contain peptides and various of positive minerals, micro elements, vitamins such as vitamin D3, vitamin C, niacin, iron, selenium, zinc, magnesium, omega-3. So these components are necessary for increasing of production of exerkines during physical activity. Tomorrow, a special doctor, Elena Korshun, will tell you about this kind of peptides and about these bioavailable minerals with peptides. Tomorrow will be a lecture which will be dedicated fully to peptide for peptides and peptide therapy as a modern anti-aging drugs. But please mention in mind that you have very good supplement, Ratio NutriLife, which increase the production of exerkines, which have various positive effects for health and for the creation of prophylactic strategy by increasing of level of physical exercises. How can we estimate the effects of diet and physical activity? Of course, it is understandable that we need to experience a change in diet and change in level of physical activity for a long period of time. I think that no less than 6 months. It must be routine of our behavior, and to bring up the routine is I think which needs some time. So after these few months, we can estimate our achievements, and according to modern scientific data, we much estimate the respiratory function, the strength of the respiratory muscles, the grip strength, and the frequency of respiratory movements during exercises and rest. We can see the increasement of grip strength, the strength of respiratory muscles, and decreasing level of frequency of respiratory movements. Also, we can check energy characteristics of organism. We can check energy level and energy balance, energy metabolism, and the level of energy consumption. Of course, it is necessary to count the number of calories which we bring to our organism with food, and we must count the numbers of caloriums which we waste during physical activity. It is necessary to have for metabolic effects, it is necessary to have a balance between number of energy which we introduce with food and which we waste with physical activity. The level of fatigue during proper nutrition and necessary level of physical activity, we can see the decreasement of symptoms of fatigue, increase the level of endurance, decrease the daytime fatigue, and increasement of level of fatigue tolerance, its ability to continue activity in spite of fatigue. Of course, it is not, we can measure metabolic indicators such as insulin resistance, level of hemoglobin, glycated hemoglobin, serum albumin, the level of postprandial hyperglycemia, it's a level of glucose after consumption of food, and the state of hormonal excess, hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal glands. We can define the level of cortisol. It's a stress hormone, which on the background of better nutrition and better movement can be decreased, which inform us that this person have better tolerance to stress and better resistance. And we can see the changes in body composition, decreasement of level of body mass index, of increasement of muscle mass, of decreasement of abdominal circumference, and decreasement of level of body weight. Also, we can observe the increasement of cardiovascular function, the heart rate during and after exercise, heart rate variability, the increasement of level of blood oxygen saturation, decreasement of the frequency of cases of orthostatic hypotension. It's a special condition when we bring up from the bed, for example, we can observe arterial hypertension with especially in elders, this situation is not very good because they can fall. The normalizing of blood pressure and the increasement of level of oxygen consumption. So this brief information, but rather universal information about modern principles of physical activity, of nutrition. You understand from this lecture that the main goal is to achieve successful aging for persons who are 65 plus, increase to reach a good level of health, which we can define by level of arterial hypertension, by level of glucose, cholesterol, and body mass index, and another goal of programs of nutrition and physical activity is to reach a good level of resilience. And if we discuss final positions about eating, about diet, about nutrition, the main source of proteins must be vegetable products, nuts, legumes, fish, soy. We can recommend moderate consumption of poultry and eggs, red meat as little as possible. The main source of fat is vegetable oils, olive, sunflower, and so on. The main source of carbohydrates is whole grains, less refined products. It is necessary at least 5 times a day introduce to diet vegetables and fruits, less potatoes. In general, nutrition must be moderate without overkill. And of course, physical activity is obligatory condition of longevity, because to have proper nutrition, it doesn't mean that we will reach health, longevity, and good quality of life. Of course, we need to move. We need to avoid hypodynamia. Hypodynamia is a special condition when level of movement is not enough for supporting good health and resilience. So thank you for the attention, dear colleagues, dear friends. Maybe you have questions. I will ask you with great pleasure. What's the relation between aging and mitochondrial function? Can we say that aerobic training is one of the most optimal in order to maintain good health through the years? Of course, aging is a process with which touch in high degree mitochondrial function. Mitochondrial, we see the dysfunction, the disruption of level of mitochondrial activity, which produce special molecules which are called free radicals. These free radicals, on one hand, are necessary to eliminate bad cells, wasted products. Of course, they are useful for these things. But on another hand, with age, we see the elevated level of free radicals, and they damage not only unhealthy cells, but they damage also the necessary cells which are healthy and which are necessary for good functioning of organism. That's why, of course, we see the direct relation between aging and mitochondrial dysfunction. And aerobic training is one method of complex influence to mitochondria and to mitochondria function, which allow us to optimal supporting and maintaining of good health through the years. So you're absolutely right. We must experience aerobic training, but it must be few components of training. Aerobic training, we need an aerobic training, so special exercises in gym, which helps to support good level of mass of muscles and avoid the weakness of muscles. And we need special exercises for balance, which allow to avoid falls. And mention in mind that physical activity must be, as we say, social. So it is better to, if we say about elders especially, we must formate group of people who experience sport training, physical activity together, because it is good for socialization of these people, and this is important thing of the prevention of dementia. Can we adjust the bodies with the use of insulin? Should we try to achieve an alkaline environment constantly, or we will miss crucial foods and nutrients with this approach? I think that nutrition must be healthy, and during this healthy nutrition, it must be everyday practice. And I think that in everyday life, for population level, we must think about not changes of insulin or of some other hormones and molecules, but we must think about prophylactic effects for cardiometabolic tissues, for atherosclerosis, dementia, and so on. So I think that we must have proper nutrition. The better variant is Mediterranean diets without restriction of any components of this diet, because when we restrict some components, it means that we have undernutrition for some molecules, for some microelements, for some vitamins, which can lead to the disease. What's your opinion on Western medicine and the whole approach of the World Health Organization to health in general? We noticed that in the last 20 years, the amount of cancer, diabetes, heart diseases, dementia, and bad biomechanics cases are constantly increasing. My position is so that we need to increase level of health coaching, because you are right that, for example, for last 20, 30 years, we see the increasing level of early cancers. When cancer occurs in patients, in persons under 50 years old. So the reason for such changes is the influence of civilization. It's improper nutrition, it's not natural nutrition, it's a high amount of red meat and decreased amount of proteins from plants, and decreased level of physical activity. I think that in such situation, World Health Organization make all necessary efforts, but World Health Organization is, it's give the theory, the direction, the ideology of movement. but it is not practice for countries and communities. They must work out the concrete steps to increase physical activity and to reach proper nutrition, good diet in their cultural environments, in their communities. I think that in this situation, the preparation of health coaches, as what we do now, is of great importance, and I think that it can make the critical amount of necessary knowledges in communities how to behave healthier. What is the role of circadian rhythm in humans? We are missing this natural clock in modern society, and if yes, what's the actual cost? Circadian rhythms is important problem. We have rather difficult regulation of circadian system for day and night, and in different seasons. For example, I like this term seasonal brain. We see the exacerbation of some diseases and health situations in spring and or in autumn. And that's why they are of great importance. I think that circadian rhythms are also the problems of civilization, because if to compare 21st and 19th century, the length of sleep decreased in our days in comparison with people who lived 100 years ago on 1 or 2 hours in different countries. And of course, we have the increased level of insomnias. We have many people who work at night time, and for example, if we will eat, for example, apple, in daytime, the level of glycemic load is one, and in night time, the level of glycemic load is another time, is higher. So today we even say that the nutrition in night time or in very early morning or in very late evening is a risk factor of development of cardiovascular diseases because of changes in circadian rhythms. Another problem is that we live in condition of light intoxication. Light intoxication is full of light in night time. For example, we see the screens of computers or television. When we go to the street, we see many lights, advertisements, and so on. So we have the influence of light in a black period of time, which damage circadian rhythms too. This is a very interesting question. You are right that we must discuss this problem. I should say that we now prepare a special seminar which we call chronotrade, chrononutrition, chronophysical activity, and chronoblockers, special drugs such as melatonin, which can correct these circadian rhythms. So of course this problem is of great importance, and the cost of these changes in circadian rhythms is other diseases, cardiovascular diseases, and especially cancer. Thank you very much. Very interesting questions. Thank you. I have a great pleasure to answer on these questions, and a great pleasure to receive these questions, because they are very experienced and of high level of education. Thank you very much. Thank you. Dear colleagues, maybe you have another questions. I understand that today is Saturday evening, and maybe everybody have their private deals and private arrangements, but those who had that possibility to present at this lecture may see it into the recording, so it is not a problem. And tomorrow, in Sunday, tomorrow we will have the last webinar of our cycle, which is dedicated to the modern anti-aging medicine. It will be delivered by Dr. Korshun. She is PhD, medical doctor, and a specialist in peptidology. Peptidology is a new science, a new branch of science, which studies peptides and of peptides as drugs and peptides in organs and tissues and systems. It's a question. Just a moment, Harry, I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
May see you in seminar in Greece with great pleasure. I think that this cooperation is very useful and it's very interesting.
Yes.
For me as for specialists. We will fly to Greece with great pleasure, and we can discuss, of course.
Yes, of course. And as we have already discussed with Andrei, we're organizing a new series of webinars and seminars here in Greece. So we will keep you posted definitely.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. So
and thank you very much. Sorry for your position, because you are a real promoter of healthy lifestyle and of education, how to behave yourself good and necessary for health.
Thank you, Andrei. Okay, thank you, everyone. So see you tomorrow at 6 o'clock. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.
Have a good evening.
Bye.